In the early hours of March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 lifted off from Kuala Lumpur, bound for Beijing. It was supposed to be a routine overnight flight, a journey taken countless times before. On board were 239 souls, passengers and crew, families, business travelers, students, and vacationers, all expecting to arrive in China by dawn. The Boeing 777 was one of the safest aircraft ever built, and the weather that night was calm. Everything about the flight seemed ordinary, but within an hour after takeoff, something extraordinary and chilling happened. The plane simply vanished. At 1:19 a.m., the co-pilot made his final, calm transmission to Malaysian air traffic control. "Good night, Malaysian 370. A few moments later, the plane's transponder, the device that identifies aircraft to civilian radar, went dark. The aircraft communications system stopped transmitting. The flight disappeared from civilian radar screens as if it had been erased from existence. No distress signal, no emergency call, no sign of trouble. For a brief moment, air traffic controllers assumed it was a technical glitch. But minutes turned into hours and hours into a night of confusion, disbelief, and then dread. Flight MH370 had vanished into the dark sky without a trace. When news broke that the aircraft was missing, families rushed to airports, clinging to hope that maybe the plane had diverted, maybe the communications had failed, maybe their loved ones were still alive. The world watched as authorities scrambled to find any clue of what had gone wrong. Initial search teams focused on the South China Sea, where the plane was last tracked. But as the hours passed, something strange emerged. Military radar later showed the aircraft had turned sharply off its course, flying back over the Malaysian peninsula, crossing the Strait of Malacca, and then disappearing over the Andaman Sea. That turn, deliberate or not, deepened the mystery. Why would a plane bound for Beijing reverse direction? And how could it vanish so completely in an age of satellites and radar? Days turned into weeks, and the search became one of the most extensive operations in aviation history. More than 24 countries joined forces, scanning vast stretches of ocean, analyzing satellite data, and deploying ships and aircraft across thousands of miles. Investigators discovered faint handshakes between the aircraft and the satellite operated by Inmarsat, suggesting the plane continued to fly for nearly 7 hours after losing contact. Using those signals, experts mapped out possible arcs, vast, curved zones over the southern Indian Ocean where the plane might have ended its flight. The search zone was immense, remote, and unforgiving. Deep waters and shifting currents made every effort painfully slow. Over the next several years, ships mapped more than 120,000 square kilometers of ocean floor, one of the most challenging underwater searches ever attempted. But nothing conclusive was found. Occasionally, debris washed up along the coast of Africa and islands in the Indian Ocean. A wing flapper in here, a piece of fuselage there, but the main wreckage remained hidden beneath the waves. Each discovery brought a flicker of hope, followed by renewed heartbreak. Families waited, desperate for answers that never came. The lack of closure turned their grief into a haunting limbo. The disappearance of MH370 is more than a mystery of metal and machinery. It's a story of human loss and unanswered questions. How can a modern airliner, equipped with advanced systems and tracked by satellites, vanish without a trace? What happened in those final hours? Was it a deliberate act, a tragic accident, or something we still don't understand? 11 years later, the world still doesn't know. The search for MH370 has become a symbol of both technological limits and emotional endurance, a reminder that even in our age of global connection, there are still places and moments where the world can simply go dark. And until the truth is found, the disappearance of Flight MH370 will remain one of the most haunting enigmas of our time, a silent wound on the conscience of aviation, and a question that continues to echo through the vast emptiness of the Indian Ocean. More than a decade after Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 disappeared, the world's search for answers continues, driven by a mix of hope, heartbreak, and the unyielding human need to know the truth. The disappearance of MH370 is not just a cold aviation mystery. It's a living story of families waiting, governments searching, and experts still refusing to give up. Even now, the ocean guards its secret tightly. But each new effort brings a glimmer of light into that darkness. When the first official search ended in 2017 after scanning over 120,000 square kilometers of the Indian Ocean without success, it felt like the world had hit an invisible wall. The search teams had mapped one of the most remote seabeds on Earth, combing ridges, trenches, and vast plains miles below the surface. Yet no fuselage, no engines, no black boxes. Just silence. For the families of the 239 people on board, that silence was unbearable. It wasn't just the absence of evidence. It was the absence of closure. How do you grieve when you don't know where to place the flowers? But hope has a way of surviving where logic gives up. In 2018, the U.S.-based company Ocean Infinity joined the search, operating with a no-find, no-fee contract, meaning they would only be paid if they located the wreckage. Using fleets of autonomous underwater vehicles capable of scanning deep ocean terrain with unmatched precision, the mission brought renewed optimism. The technology was promising, the data advanced, and the will to find MH370 stronger than ever. Yet, once again, after months of searching, the ocean remained silent. Years passed. The world moved on, but not everyone did. Some of the victims' families became researchers in their own right, dedicating their lives to studying flight data, satellite paths, and ocean currents. They formed communities across continents, bound not by nationality, but by shared loss and determination. For them, every new article, every fresh analysis, every rumor of a search revival meant hope flickering back to life. They refused to accept that MH370 would simply remain missing. They believe and still believe that the answers are out there, buried beneath layers of salt water and time. In December 2024, that hope was rekindled once again when Malaysia announced plans to resume the search in partnership with Ocean Infinity. The new mission, set to cover roughly 15,000 square kilometers of seabed in the southern Indian Ocean, would revisit areas guided by new drift models and updated data from the original satellite pings. For the first time in years, there was real movement, ships preparing, equipment calibrating, and eyes once again turning toward the sea. When the new search officially began in early 2025, the families of MH370's passengers watched with cautious hope. After so many disappointments, belief had become a fragile thing, but still, it lived. And then in April 2025, the operation was suddenly suspended due to violent storms in the search area. The ocean, it seemed, was not ready to give up its secret. The vessels were forced to retreat, with plans to resume when conditions improved. The announcement was heartbreaking, a cruel echo of the uncertainty that had haunted this case for over a decade. But this is not the end. The teams plan to return. The technology has advanced further than ever before. Autonomous drones that can dive deeper, sonar imaging that can see sharper, and oceanic mapping more precise than any previous generation. The human will define the truth has evolved with it. Each delay feels like a wound reopening, but every new expedition reminds the world that hope still breathes. Because this is not just about a missing airplane. It's about 239 lives that vanish into the night sky, and the families who still wait for their return, not in body but in truth. It's about proving that even the most stubborn mysteries can one day be solved. Somewhere out there, beneath the crushing weight of the Indian Ocean, lies the answer. Perhaps a broken wing, a cockpit, a recorder still holding the final words of that silent flight. When it is found, and one day it will be, the world will finally exhale. Until then, the waves keep their secret, whispering a name that has become a symbol of both tragedy and persistence. MH370, gone but never forgotten.